Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first IPA AAPI virtual panel. Before we start the panel, I would like to give a quick overview of the agency to our external speakers. The Illinois Power Agency is an independent state agency established under Illinois law in 2007. The IPA is in charge of electricity procurement for residential and small commercial customers of Illinois. And the IPA is also responsible for the Illinois Renewable Portfolio Standard, which is a public policy designed to increase the development of renewables in Illinois. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Anthony Starr, Director of the Illinois Power Agency, who will be providing welcome remarks and sharing a few words. Anthony?
Great. Thanks, Megha, and good afternoon, everybody. So today, as Megha described, we're coming together to celebrate Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and I really appreciate everyone joining today. So AAPI Heritage Month is used to recognize the accomplishments of Asian American and Pacific Islander Americans, as well as their many contributions to the history, culture, and achievements of the United States. So in honor of AAPI Heritage Month, we're hosting this virtual panel, Advancing Leaders Through Collaboration, to highlight the contributions of Asian Americans in the Illinois public sector. The panel is bringing together Asian American leaders from several government agencies, ours and outside, to share their perspectives on what collaborative leadership means to them, as well as to provide best practices on how to foster collaboration to create a positive impact on the workplace. So on behalf of the agency, I want to thank all of our panelists for their contributions to the public sector and finding time to join the panel. Today, we're joined by our own Sanjay Patel, the IPA's Chief Operating Officer, Edwin Tomlos, who's the Assistant Commissioner for Business Affairs and Consumer Protection Office for the City of Chicago, and Rupal Mehta, who's a legal counsel at the Department of Innovation and Technology. At the IPA celebrating AAPI Heritage Month, it begins internally with our employees, and it's designed to further our belief in championing diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're doing this because as an agency, we're committed to creating an inclusive and engaged workforce where diversity is fostered and celebrated. We've started that journey with events like today's event, but there are still many steps ahead in our journey, and I look forward to more events like this in the future. And with that, I want to hand it over to our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Manager, Sharon Johnson. Sharon?
Thank you very much, Anthony, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to begin our panel discussion today by introducing our special guest. I'll begin with Rupal Mehta. Rupal Mehta is legal counsel at the State of Illinois Department of Innovation and Technology, DeWitt, since July 2020. Prior to working for DeWitt, she worked at the Department of Central Management Services as Property Management Counsel and Acting Deputy General Counsel, supporting the Bureau of Property Management Services for approximately 12 years. So before joining the state, she worked as an in-house counsel for a real estate firm. She attended Michigan State University with a degree in supply chain management, working for an oil company and Accenture prior to attending law school. And in her spare time, she enjoys spending time with her family and traveling and learning and exploring other cultures. Welcome, Rupal. Next guest on our panel today is Edwin Tomlos. Edwin has been a city official for over 15 years and is currently a City of Chicago Department of Business Affairs Consumer Protection Assistant Commissioner, overseeing and the administration of the neighborhood business development centers and Chicago business centers, grant programs with over 70 business service organizations providing free business development assistance to startup entrepreneurs and business owners in their respective neighborhoods. So prior to his tenure at the city, he was a small business owner of a neighborhood coffee house, a project manager for ABN AMRO, an international commercial bank and corporate trainer, and senior banker for First National Bank of Chicago. He was active in local Filipino American community, having helped organize art, film, food festivals, and fun fact, he was a news reporter for Chicago Philippine Reports TV and columnist for a community newspaper. Edwin holds a Master of Science degree in communication from Northwestern University. He's currently a board member of Volunteer of America, VOA, Illinois. In his free time, he was an avid long distance runner, having completed 3 Chicago marathons. That is quite impressive. Nowadays, Edwin and his wife and his 3-year-old daughter enjoy long walks in the forest preserve near their home in Albany Park. Welcome, Edwin. And last but not least, the IPA's own Sanjay Patel. Sanjay is the Chief Operating Officer for the Illinois Power Agency. Sanjay joined the IPA in 2013, and in his role, he's responsible for governance and internal controls across agency operations. In addition, he also is responsible for the development, implementation, and annual updates of entry-level policies and procedures. Sanjay also leads the IPA's IT, telecom management, administration, and facilitates agency strategic planning sessions. Prior to joining the IPA, Sanjay was Chief Financial Officer for the Illinois Office of Health Information Technology, where he was responsible for a whopping $19 million budget allocation to the state of Illinois from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2019 to develop and launch a state-level health information exchange. And prior to that, he was Deputy Chief Accountability Officer for the Illinois Department of Central Management Services. And before joining the public sector, Sanjay spent over 2 decades in the private sector in various leadership roles within organizations across multiple industries, including management, consulting, information technology, and financial services, banking. Sanjay holds a bachelor's degree in business commerce from DePaul University, a master's degree in communication from Northwestern University, and an MBA in finance, also from DePaul University. And with that, I would like to extend a huge IPA welcome to our guest panelists. Thank you all very much for spending time with us this afternoon to acknowledge Asian American Pacific Islander Month and to discuss this very prevalent topic, collaborative leadership. So I want to begin by asking all of our panelists to respond to an opening question I have, and we'll have individual insight from further questioning as we get started. So I have an opening question for each of our panelists, and RuPaul, let's start with you. My question is, what does collaborative leadership mean to you, and why is it important?
Collaborative leadership to me is very important because I think that's what discovers that ends in success for you. So through collaborative leadership, which to me is teamwork, and when you get into a role or a position, it is to go into that position. And I think history is often understated and not valued. So going into that leadership role and collaborating with the teammates that are already there and asking the right questions and certain things you want to go in and you want to hit the ground running, make changes, make impacts, and correct these actions right away. But through collaborative leadership and working with the teammates that are currently in-house, that are currently there, and I'm sorry if my internet is kind of going out, I just got a message, but it's asking the right questions. And a lot of times something occurs because it's an action or result of a audit or a action or a result of some sort of situation that was occurring in the past that may not necessarily be something that is currently of impact now. So it is going in and asking the right questions, collaborating with those teammates and getting their perspective. And then only through that teamwork can you have success. You know, maybe it is that certain ideas will change and it's not. And then actually it gets the buy-in from your internal and external stakeholders. Is if you go in there with an explanation of this is why we're changing it and it's no longer needed, or it's needed because of this, or you can change it. But I think that builds a long-term success factor, is by having that collaborative teamwork, respecting the importance of history and then working with them. And then through that diversity and collaboration, it's valuing that perspective and showing the teamwork that you have, that you value them, that there is something of importance there.
Thank you so much for that. Great answer. Edwin, how about you? What does collaborative leadership mean to you? Why is it important from your perspective?
Sure, absolutely. For me, collaborative leadership is when you bring together managers, top-level executives, as well as staff out of their silos, kind of bringing them together in one collaborative workspace, if you will, where perhaps information can be shared more organically, right? And everyone can take greater responsibility for the whole, right? This allows everybody to work together again without any type of walls between them. I think that it's important because this will allow the management, executive, and staff to be able to seek out a diverse set of opinions and thus also get a diverse set of information back that would be critical for everybody involved. As teammates build strategies together and help solve problems, it becomes more fluid this way. And as a result, I believe employees are more engaged. They feel more trusted because of that, as well as they're more likely to take ownership of their work. That's why it's important.
Great, great. It's a good answer. Thank you for that. Sanjay, what are your insights on the same thing, collaborative leadership and why it's important? What do you think?
I echo many of the sentiments that have been stated before by Rubel and Edwin, but I would add to it that as a leader in several positions in my past, as well as today, is understanding your team implicitly from the top down across, understanding what their strengths are, where their abilities are aligned the best for the task at hand, whatever the goal is. It's putting people in a position to make a difference in the outcome that you're pursuing. And the understanding that as a team, there is no high level, low level. Everyone is one unit, one cohesive unit, and working towards a common goal. And so having the opportunity to get to know people and understand what their skill sets are and how you can apply them strategically in the task at hand is extremely important for two reasons. One, because you want positive outcomes in the manner in which you expected, but also give them an opportunity to shine and showcase their talents in terms of their individual contributions as well as collective contributions as well. So it's everything that's said before, but also understanding your team and where their strengths and skills are.
Great, Dooley. That was great insight. Thank you for your answers. Now I want to begin our discussion with just the brief amount of time we have together today. I'd like to cover two themes off of this theme of advancing leadership. So I want to talk about your individual leadership styles and then some of the challenges for our audience today. And I'll just wrap up with some general questions if we have time after that. So let's get started to talk about your individual leadership styles. Sanjay, tell us about your individual leadership style. How has it evolved over time? Can you give us some perspective on that?
Sure. I mean, it's definitely evolved. There's no doubt. I mean, as a leader, number one, you have to understand you don't know everything. You have a set of experiences and skills and expertise that you bring to the table, but your chief challenge is to coalesce all of the skills and people around you on your team so that you have a unified approach, as I said earlier, towards achieving that common goal. For me, it's always been the people in me individually and collectively know more than I do. And there's nothing wrong with that. The challenge is how do you harness all that towards the objective at hand. And so going back to my consulting days, I led project teams anywhere from 5 to 20 on Sarbanes-Oxley, which was back in the day, government throwing more money at financial fraudulent financial situations with Enron and some other companies back in 2002. But the idea was to say, how do we work together as a team and understand that each one of us brings something different to the table, different perspectives, different experiences, and having the ability to parlay that into one particular focus is always a challenge, and sometimes it can be overwhelming at times. But my style has always been reach out to the team, let them be able to provide the meaningful guidance, insight, and contributions towards a collective goal. And I would also add that their individual contributions are in such a way that we all rise together. There is no spotlight on one person, on any one particular person, but the spotlight is really on the individuals or entity that you're doing the service for. So in consulting, my motto was always get the client promoted with the services that you have to offer. So, and the team individually and collectively works towards that goal.
Wonderful. Thank you. RuPaul, how does your leadership style, when you think about that, how does your leadership style benefit you when you need to work with others in different agencies or outside agencies? How does your leadership style, when you think about what your style is, how does that benefit you when you need to work with others?
I'm a big proponent of teamwork. And so for me, it's creating relationships, both with the internal and external stakeholders, and to create those interpersonal relationships from the start. So when I go into a new role or a different, or any situation, whether it's a personal or professional situation, it's to create those relationships from the onset. I think creating it from the onset is imperative so that you can reach out and ask questions or know who to go to get those questions or to figure out what strengths and weaknesses. And, and it's definitely evolving throughout time. As personal growth, personal circumstances change, you grow as a person and your leadership style evolves. But I think it's that creating those relationships is a key.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. The interpersonal skills, and they call it soft skills sometimes. That's very important and sometimes understated in a few entities, but thank you for that. Edwin, tell us about the primary role model for your particular leadership style. Why was that person so instrumental in your development?
It's interesting because when I was thinking about it, not one specific one comes to mind per se, but I been fortunate to have within my network some really, I think, influential and inspirational leaders. First and foremost, I've had the opportunity to collaborate with the CEO of the Chinese Mutual Aid Association. His name is Dennis Mondero. And whenever there's an opportunity for him to elevate a fellow AAPI, he jumps all over it. And be it from just on a professional level, but also on a civic level, he's at your beck and call, and a simple phone call can help resolve an issue for those that may be having difficulties with an organization, or just to collaborate with how he handled things when a certain issue had arose. And then on the flip side of that, I actually used to work with Evan Sharp. He's the co-founder of Pinterest, and he's now with Johnny Ive at, I think it's called Love From, their new firm. But essentially, he worked with us here at the ACP, the Small Business Center. And I've followed him since and communicated in a brief manner. But in an article I recently read, when they were asking about, talking about resilience, which is important for all of us, especially for those of us, brown and Black community, where we find it difficult more oftentimes to even reach a leadership level, right? And so he said that, be aware of how you feel. And when you're ready to give up, tell yourself that's the pain of growth. And I thought that was really enlightening. And inclusive of that is that whenever you face hardship, make some time to consciously dream, to visualize your future, right? So not only dwelling on issues, but then looking forward and looking past it, and perhaps maybe even taking advantage of it. So,
wow, that's really insightful, and it's a great segue into our next segment when you mentioned about resilience. I'd like to talk a little bit now about some of the challenges that you've faced. RuPaul, can you tell us what can leaders do to advance, what you feel they can do to advance minorities and women in the leadership pipeline? Is there anything that you see from your perspective that would benefit where you are, or just overall in the business industry, to advance minorities and women into leadership roles?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you want to be supportive and be an advocate and have a voice out there, but also I think it's to have allies, and it's not just women supporting women or minorities supporting minorities, but maybe it's men supporting women as well, and have them be the ally, or having other diverse groups supporting another minority group. That's very important. I think it's to also take on a responsibility to develop and grow, and maybe from the onset, identify and make gender diversity or minority diversity a day one goal, not get in there and a day like 365, all of a sudden it becomes a spotlight, but make it almost an automatic day one goal that you want to promote gender diversity, minority diversity, whatever it may be. Showcase the women leaders within your organization and minority leaders within your organization, and have a spotlight on them. Let it, so that maybe there's somebody there that will connect, that opportunity. They may identify, the story might be something that motivates them, and basically showcase the women leaders, minority leaders within an organization, and, have those allies.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is very important. It's a challenge in some instances because of individual perspectives on trying to promote others. So that's a great way to look at that type of dynamic, advancing women and minorities. Thank you for that. Sanjay, what are some of the best ways for leaders in the government sector to support other leaders? What do you think about that?
I think getting people involved first and foremost in opportunities that they otherwise would not be aware of or recognize through the network. Making sure that, like when I'm on the speaking circuit, I talk about people and their personal brands. And so you can have every credential under the sun, academically or otherwise, but how you set yourself apart is not the credentials per se, but how you represent yourself in the community, in the organization, and what you have to offer in terms of the experiences and skill sets and mindsets that you bring forward. But the idea for a leader to inspire other new leaders or emerging leaders, or ones that have been around for a while, is to get them actively engaged in the activities that are happening currently, whether they're statewide or locally or however. But getting them involved and aware of what's happening around them, and understand that as a leader, I've been mentored by people, and I pay it forward by mentoring others. And it's a really rewarding experience to be able to mentor younger talent that wants to merge in a leadership role at some point in their professional journey. And so when you play a role like that, it adds value, and you get a concept, what I call return on relationships, then, because then those relationships forge new opportunities, not only for themselves but also for you. So there's a reciprocity element to it as well.
Right. And you mentioned mentoring. So you said that you pay it forward, and that's important to not only make sure that your skill set is imparted to someone else who can also pay it forward. Have you had any challenges to try to mentor as you do that, or finding people to basically grow the pipeline?
Well, finding the opportunities isn't as difficult as it seems, but having the answers to questions that are posed to you are sometimes challenging, because I certainly have not been in every single market space or had every opportunities from the diverse backgrounds that I've been affiliated with. But at the end of the day, it's finding that common ground and finding a common theme as to how they want to navigate the professional journey. That's where I can add value. As to I've experienced pitfalls myself in my journey, and I think others have had challenges too. And it's how to overcome those challenges by focusing on your brand and focusing on how you can represent yourself to the best possible ability to those around you in your network and otherwise, that will eventually set you apart from other candidates that would otherwise be just about as equal as you are in terms of experience. So it's a reciprocity approach that I always advocate.
Thank you. Yes, that's great. Thank you for that. Edwin, can you describe some of the challenges you faced to ensure support from peers you have? How did you remedy some of those challenges? When you think about challenges to your leadership style and just what you've had to do with the position that you have, City of Chicago.
Yeah, so, as my leadership style evolved over the years, different subsets or those who had worked with me would have noticed an evolving way to overcome the challenges. But it all stemmed from, obviously, from within, first and foremost, by the style that I had, where when I first started in the banking industry, it was heavily top down. And then evolving towards my project management years, where it was more about consensus building. And then towards the latter part, and currently right now, it's going towards more collaborative environment, which then now imposes itself a different set of challenges. But at the end of the day, I think what strings them all together in terms of when opposition comes to play with your ideas, your suggestions, and what have you, even though you presented it well and provided supporting information. And that's how I always approach it, is give them as much information so that they know where I'm coming from. But at the end of the day, unfortunately, it's all about communication and how you impart the information and the delivery of it. And so depending on the sensitivity of the information, it requires a greater touch, a higher touch, so to speak, right? A phone call versus an email versus an in-person meeting, depending on how important the information is and how complex it is, right? It's amazing what you can do on a face-to-face conversation. Even now that we're in this virtual and remote world where, we're seeing each other through the camera, but, sitting together in a coffee house and having a sit down really can open up and help others see where you're coming from. And conversely, you listening, and that's the best part of it too, is that as you grow in your leadership role, hopefully your listening abilities also get better. And so that you in itself, you're by yourself, have better comprehension, right? And it's a two-way street. But at the end of the day, it's how you communicate, and you should be communicating well and following up accordingly in order to make sure that everybody understands where you're coming from.
That is so important that you mentioned communication, because I know that's key. A lot of times you can't, communication gets misconstrued over email, over anything like that, because you can't tell tone, pitch, facial expression. So your description for a phone call versus an email, that's insightful to recognize as a leader. What type of communication do you need for a specific amount of information that you need to impart? That's important. Thank you for that. So that's how you would remedy, just to make sure that you understand how to communicate. So that's important as leaders. We all know that. Okay, well, last set of questions before we take additional questions from our audience. We'll have some time pretty soon. Just want to ask you guys some general questions about your succession plan, satisfying leadership role, and also civic engagement. So I'll start with Sanjay, just to kick this round off. What stage, Sanjay, do you think leadership should start to begin a succession plan?
From the onset, from day one, you get into that role, and as I said, you have to understand your team, where they come from, what they contribute, how they contribute, and get an idea as to what their aspirations are going forward, and obviously juxtaposing that with what the task at hand. It's interesting, and that requires skillful communication individually and collectively as a team. I think Edwin's right. Communication is by far one of the greatest attributes of any effective leader. And if you Google if you Google leadership, you're going to get a million definitions, and there's a reason for that, because everyone has a different perspective. But one of the greatest attributes is communication, and in this case is with the team. And from succession planning, having an idea as to who plays what role on that team, and playing the what if game. If there was going to be change on the team, or if there's a change in expectations or requirements with what you're having to deal with individually as well as a team, understanding that change is part of life, it's part of business, and having an action plan in place that says, okay, when a skillful expert resource is now left the team, you're in a challenge to replace that type of experience. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen right away, but you have to ensure there's procedures in place that allow you to transition that language over, that experience and skill set over time, so that when you can manage the succession plan more successfully. I would also add that communication, the criticality of it is, I live by one axiom that communication is the lifeline of every relationship, personal or professional or otherwise. Without it, it's a two-way street. So you have to understand, manage expectations, understand and position opportunities and different variety of roles for individuals on your team, so they can play not only the role that they were brought in to play, but also be adaptable in pursuing other elements on the team as well. So that's a long-winded answer to saying succession planning begins day one and it doesn't end. It's always ongoing.
So have you had to address any challenges that you've had with succession planning in your career so far, or just
in consulting? Yes, because there are times when the client was not happy with a resource on my team, or there were times when some member of my team just left. They got a better opportunity somewhere else. In some cases, with a competing consulting firm, which it happens. It's a part of life. It's a part of life, and so you have to be able to pivot. You have to be able to adapt. The one word I like to use in the acronym for BRAND is adaptability. A for adaptability, and the reason there's two reasons. There's a reason for that. It's a word that's fused, that has adapt and ability next to each other. So having that as a mantra, as a mindset, allows you to be more agile and be able to address sudden changes in your particular group or team, where succession planning it's part of it, but you never. It's not something you anticipate, and when it happens suddenly, and so. You just have to be able to adapt and have the ability to be able to resolve that as quickly as you can, and as effectively as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Good, great answer, RuPaul. As you think back over the career that you've had, training that you've had, what would you say was your most satisfying leadership role, and why was it satisfying for you?
And I thought about this prior to this panel discussion, and I don't know if I can identify just one. And the reason being is that for me, satisfying leadership, to be a leader is to basically have success as part of your team, or individuals having successes. And so for me, the satisfaction comes from uplifting and guiding somebody. And the net results for all my roles where I've been a leader has been guiding somebody and lifting them up and putting them on the proper path, or working with them to determine what the proper path was. And I think that comes from being a child of an immigrant and seeing the struggles of my parents, where I think to myself, if somebody could have guided them or lifted them up, they would have had an easier path. And so if I can give somebody that easier path or make them happy or get them to where they need to be through collaboration with them and discussing it with them, those have been my most satisfying leadership roles, has been working alongside somebody to see their success.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I just one. It's been in every single role, whether even in a role or even in college and anywhere I've been, it's just been almost that mentorship relationship and guiding them in that right path. So I don't know if I have just one. It's to see somebody else's success is the most satisfying leadership role that I've had.
Right.
Seeing them.
That's important. Thank you for that. And that's true. You probably can't pick just one. So thank you. You've gone down the path of just seeing success or imparting that success to others. So that's very important. Let's see, Edwin, let's ask you to describe utilizing civic engagement to advance leadership within your community. Why is this important? You mentioned that you used to be a report for the local news, and why do you think civic engagement is important to advance leadership within your community?
Plain and simple, it's being part of a bigger whole, right? Knowing that everybody has a part to play and that you are not an island and you are part of this, for lack of a better word, community. And starting with your very own and then expanding out to your physical community itself and the community at large, the city in itself, right? We are all interconnected in one way or the other. And that's what makes me love what I do currently, because of the impact that I have in the work that we do, because it is citywide. But conversely, in coming back to myself and what it means to me, it means, really just making sure that we're connected and that it's also being and seeing the moral and civic perspective of things, right? Because there are multiple dimensions to an issue. At the end of the day, you want to see it from not only your set of eyes, but from others. And perception sometimes is reality. So what you want to ensure is that you take full scope of everything that's around you and how everything is interconnected in one way or the other. And that actually is how I think one evolves as a human being, because then you are then and thusly respecting others in the process. Because at the end of the day, we are all here in this one big mothership. And what we want to do is to make sure that anything and everything that we do to make and justify, in a sense, and have informed moral decisions to make sure that what we do is for the best of society in general. So by being involved, you get more in tune and more in touch with the needs of the community. And then at the end of the day, by being in touch and being involved, you get to see the people there that are really impassioned and the ones that will percolate to the top in the sense that have leadership potential. And then you can pull them, and especially those within the underserved communities or the historically underserved communities where leadership typically isn't pulled from. It's an opportunity. And that's why I think that organizations should be intentional in making sure that those individuals who have been underserved for historically should no longer be underserved. And that goes too with making sure that leadership opportunities are provided to in an equitable manner, in a sense, right?
Thank you. Boy, that was a great answer to a complex question there when you think about it. But thank you for your insight on that one. Panelists, I want to take time to thank you very much today for sharing your insight. Soon we're going to have time for questions from our audience. So audience, please start to get together your questions ready to submit via the chat box for our guest. But before we do that, I have a closing question I'd like to ask for our panelists to respond to, similar to the opening question that we have. It's a little different. And I will start with RuPaul today for our closing question. Can you share with us some nuggets of wisdom that you've learned that would be helpful to others aspiring to prepare for a leadership role? Like, in addition to what you've shared already, some of the fantastic viewpoints that you have, what do you think would be beneficial to others today to inspire them to a leadership role?
Don't be afraid to create your own opportunities. I think a lot of times you have to go knock on the doors, network, and through discussion, try to figure out what your goals are. And once you identify your goals, have personal insight as to where you want to be in life or where exactly you see yourself. Don't be afraid to go knock on the doors. Don't be afraid of asking questions. Don't be afraid to keep knocking on those doors. If you don't get a response the first time or a second time, keep knocking. And then additionally, I think, no surprise, I'm a big planner. And I think one of the biggest surprises that has led to my successes in life is that I was initially afraid to say no. Like, I think I had a checklist of items that I wanted to go through, and I checked off these boxes and said, this is a path I need to go. And then an opportunity comes apart, and on paper, it's perfect, but there's something that doesn't feel right, or there's another opportunity that's actually more alluring, but it doesn't fit well on paper. So don't be afraid to pivot. And, through pivoting is where I found most of my successes. It's not these pre-planned destinations that I had, but it's through pivoting, meeting the right people, networking, knocking on doors, talking to people, and doing a lot of self-reflection as to what you want to do in life. What I wanted to do at 21 is definitely not what I'm doing now. And it's fine. Like, your life, it's ever evolving. So go with the changes, go with the flows.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Thank you. Edwin, same question. What nuggets of wisdom have you learned that would be helpful for others aspiring to leadership roles? What do you think you can finally impart to give advice for?
Sure. I think one of the things I think is key is be self-aware of your strengths and weaknesses. That way, you can be more realistic in your goal setting, right? But also too, that way that you can exercise the right muscles so that you exercise the muscle to strengthen your strengths and then to help overcome your weaknesses. At the end of the day, what you want to ensure is that you are setting yourself in the right path. In order for you to get to your right path, you have to have your right goals. How do you get to your goals? Well, being self-aware and knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are. And also too, being open, and as Rupa had mentioned, being open to change, right? And also being open to opportunities. You have to be, flexible and be able to pivot and change. As times change, we change. But at the end of the day, be open to it. It's not one of those things where it should be feared, but it should actually be welcome, because it is sometimes the only opportunity that you may have that might be open for you, because a shifting of events in the world occurred, a pandemic happened, and all of a sudden, wow, doors are open for you that never opened before. And suddenly people are being woke. Companies are being woke, and opportunities are presenting itself. So when opportunity presents itself, you welcome it in, but you have to welcome it in. You have to be open for it, to accept it and take advantage of it. And then lastly, I think, play the long game, because you're gonna have roadblocks. You're gonna get stumbles. It's about getting up and not staying down, right? So push through the difficult times, remember your goals, and in the process, keep strengthening that muscle, the right muscles for your strength. And then at the end of the day, hopefully through your resilience, you get to what you were hoping for, or at least something close to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. Thank you so much, Edwin, for that. Sanjay, same question to you, last but not least. If you can impart some information on that would be helpful for others aspiring to a leadership role, what do you think that would be from your perspective?
Building on what my esteemed colleagues have already said, doesn't matter where you are in life, entry level, middle management, senior management, board member, it doesn't matter where you are in the professional journey, but focusing on your brand, understanding what attributes define your brand, which is what you want others to actually recognize, observe, understand, and also make decisions on in terms of how they would want to leverage you in opportunities. And understand that enjoy the journey. It's not about destinations. It's not about, you may have a goal that you want to be a senior executive, that's fine, but don't miss out on the opportunities along the way. And there are going to be points of adversity. I myself have been laid off twice in my journey, and there were substantial reasons for it. One of them being 9/11, but nevertheless, how do you overcome that adversity and keep an open mind, like Edwin said, be open to different challenges and opportunities, and understand that it is a journey. It's not a destination. And then I would also add to that. I used to work for a little company called Arthur Andersen. You might have heard of them. They weren't really little; they were gigantic, and so they were known for acronyms. And so I'm not the acronym king, but before anybody thinks otherwise, I had nothing to do with their implosion. Just so you know, I was never there for that. But nevertheless, leadership is something where I think every person who wants to be a leader should understand what leadership means. And like I said, it's a different definition for everybody. But I wrote this on LinkedIn a while ago, and it's an acronym. It's leveraging empowerment and delegation, empathy, respect, strategically, to harness innovation and performance. That's leadership. And being able to understand what that means is gathering a team that individually and collectively can work towards a common goal. And no single person shines. Everyone moves up together and enjoys the fruitful efforts of what they put forth. But understand that adversity comes along with that too. So you have to be understanding and compassionate. Hence the word empathy. So just understand, if you want to be a leader, it takes more than just book knowledge or test knowledge or experience. It takes an assortment of attributes that differentiate you from other people in that particular initiative or goal and sets you apart. That's why I focus on brand.
So are you sure you're not the acronym king there, Sanjay? I mean, that was phenomenal about the leadership. Go over that one more time. I want to write that down, what you said leadership is.
It's leveraging empowerment and delegation with empathy, respect, strategically, to harness innovation and performance, or you can replace performance with progress if you're working towards a goal. So I understand it's just a word, but if you dissect every word, you will understand and appreciate what leadership is all about.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Anything I missed, you can send me an email, right? Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. We have, what's the time here? We're all set for questions from our audience. Mega, can I turn this back over to you if we have anything in our chat box from anyone?
We don't have any questions yet, but I actually do have a question. Maybe Perfect. I can ask this question to our panelists. I know you've all talked about mentorship outside of work, in the workplace. What's the value of sponsorship, and what can leaders do to sponsor minorities and women in the workplace? And is there a difference between the two?
Who is that question for, Mega? Just everyone, or whoever wants to answer?
Everyone, anyone who wants to answer.
All right.
When you say sponsorship, what exactly are you referring to, Mega?
So mentoring, could be sponsoring an employee, right? Like coaching, kind of along that line.
Well, I guess the way I can answer that is I work with college students today, with many of them in the network of my son, who's actually going to be a junior at Purdue University. And they'll pick my brain every now and then when we get together and say, look, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? How did you start here? What did you do differently here? And I think the idea is to put yourself in opportunities or venues where you can add that type of value and engage in dialogue that will inspire them to pursue their, number one, shape their individual goals if they haven't thought of them, but be able to recognize how they can actually position themselves to make a difference in not only the industry in which they want to play or pursue a career, but also the occupation per se as well. So in other words, if you want to be in accounting, does that mean you want to be an accountant or you want to be an auditor? There's different varieties and areas of pursuit and growth that you can go after. So, but also mentoring is more than just answering questions. It's also there's a sense of inspiration that comes with it. That if they haven't thought through things, they haven't been around the world that long, and much less in the professional world, being able to understand where they're coming from and being able to guide them in a direction that they otherwise would not recognize. To me, that's important.
Great.
Thanks, Sanjay.
Well, I can think of something else too here. When you mentioned that.
Sharon, I think Edwin has something to add.
Perfect. Okay, there we go.
Just a little tidbit because Sanjay addressed it well, and but as an addendum, I think if you were to, and perhaps maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Megan, if you wanted to differentiate the two between a mentorship versus a sponsorship. Whereas the mentorship is a one-to-one relationship with your mentee, the mentor and the mentee. With the sponsorship, I believe the mentor in that sense also extends their network to you as well, right? So they open things up for you and in a sense, kind of opens their Rolodex and shares it with you so that you now have a greater opportunity. Whereas the strict mentorship is almost as if it's a little bit more focused. Then the sponsorship is actually what perhaps might be more ideal because it then gives the mentee opportunities that they may not have because they're now being able to be connected to theoretically the mentor who has greater connection.
Yes, thank you. Yep, I was looking for the word opportunity, and mentorship can be, just one-on-one, right? Imparting knowledge, but sponsorship could be more deliberate, that looking out for those opportunities. Yeah. Looks like we do have a question that actually came from, oh, wow, we have tons of questions. This is great. One from Ganita. For anyone who wants to answer, any of the panelists, is there a difference from your perspective between coaching and mentoring someone?
I would say that there's a little bit of a difference between mentoring and coaching. I think coaching is a little bit more specific, performance driven. So maybe it's the net result of like you're guiding them in a way where it's specific to a role or specific to an end result that you want to see from them. Where I think mentorship, to me, it's a little bit more general. You're giving them guidance and opening up your network to them and answering questions and kind of fostering their development in a more general capacity and not necessarily steering them or guiding them directly into a role. You're not telling them what to do, where I think coaching based on the destination, it's a little bit more specific to me. Thank you.
Great. We have another question. I really like this question, actually. This kind of fits a lot of people here in the audience. A lot of the conversation has been centered around leadership, which is great. This is from Audrey. Audrey is our program manager for the Illinois Adjustable Block Program. A lot of the conversation has been centered around leadership, which is great, but some of us are not yet at that point in our career. How can those of us that hold a similar position to our minority co-workers help lift them up and support them from a peer level?
Well, from a base level assistance is if and when you are in the company of those who are in a management position where your peers may be reporting to said management, give them an earful in a sense, right? And let them hear the great work that your peer does. Take the opportunity to uplift and share, because they may not be aware, right? Because unfortunately, we hear about things that are not going well more quickly and more often, and versus the things that do go well. And so if an organization is attuned to sharing success stories, fantastic. But you know what? At the end of the day, when you have the ear of somebody that might be of assistance to somebody's career, by all means, help share the good work that your peer does. And also, hey, why don't you toot your own horn too, in a nice way?
I would add to that, excellent comments there, Edwin, is have an open line of communication with your superiors and the people around you. And in the case of peers, it's one thing to say someone did a really great job. They did an awesome job doing this and making this a reality. But it's another more insightful comment to say, what is it that they did really well? What skills were they absolutely adept at? Or did they demonstrate skills that you otherwise would never have recognized before? And how can you leverage that for the greater benefit of the organization, whether it be their function, their unit, or the organization as a whole? But giving, like Edwin said, giving kudos to what the effort is great, but being able to articulate what they actually specifically did well and was not necessarily part of their job description per se, or skill sets they put on display before, is something that you recognize and can and share with their superiors, goes a long way towards not only the notion of succession planning, but also organic growth within the organization.
Great. I would like to thank all our panelists for taking the time out of their busy schedule to be part of the IPA's first AAPI virtual panel event. So thank you all for joining today's discussion, and have a great weekend.